The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
He came with sequels in his bag, reboots and flops, a pop culture tag. Yeah, we talk the rise, the fall, the shame of the movie series that forgot their name. So line up the clips and cue the score. Whoa, we've seen this plot 5 times before. No happy end, just one more spin. Queen on the long road to ruin, it begins.
Is that the first time you've heard that?
No, I heard it when because you played that. I think you debuted it when you and Sean did the Naked Gun trilogy, and I listened to that one. So
Cool. What do you think in terms of AI-generated slop cover of the Foo Fighters?
I've heard much worse.
That's always the nicest thing you're ever going to say to me.
No, it's about the nicest thing I say generally about AI-generated music and art.
That's fair.
Mostly because, I should phrase this carefully because I'm not anti-generative creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that if that's all you do, if you don't go through the editing process and refining, if there's no part of you in it other than I learned how to prompt it, well, that's not quite the same thing as using it as a force multiplier for ability that you've gained on your own. And they're two different things. And
I would say that was the second that was part of, because Suno does 2 songs for you at the same time. And I think that was the second iteration. I very rarely like the first draft.
It's almost never very good.
Yeah. Well, also, I don't always know what I want. So, I kind of use the AI generative process both in ChatGPT with the writing, or in Suno AI with the music, or back to ChatGPT with art. I very rarely like the first thing I get, but it gives me a direction that gives me it refines and configures for me in a way that would be difficult to do without the use of generative technology.
I consider it to be very useful, especially if you want to hire, and you should for a lot of this stuff, mind you, if you're going to hire a real artist, but you need to give them some direction, I tend to find that having some stuff that is generally what you would want, as an example, as a reference, is more helpful than trying. It makes the connection between your brain and their brain easier. Otherwise, it's...
The example I always use is, I don't know if you ever watched Mad About You, but there's a scene where Yoko Ono is saying to Paul Reiser, "I want you to film the wind." And he's like, "Okay, like the wind blowing through trees?" "No, the wind." And Paul Reiser's like, "I'm a documentary filmmaker. This is a visual medium. How the fuck do you want me to film wind?" And he's trying and trying. The funny part of the episode is he's trying and trying and trying. And finally, he just begs and tells, "I can't do it, Yoko. I can't. I'm sorry," because he really wanted to work with her, and and he wanted to satisfy this woman. He wanted to please her, and she was like, "It's no biggie, Paul. Whatever." Anyway, welcome to the Long Road to Ruin. That is not Sean. That is, in fact, my co-host on Damn You Hollywood, Robert Winfrey. Say hello, Robert Winfrey.
Hello, Robert Winfrey.
Very good. So this is kind of a Damn You Hollywood, because we should have done 28 years later when it came out, but we are slaves to consistency in history, so we did Elio instead, while the rest of the world was talking about 28 years later. Damn you, Hollywood! Always with our finger on the throat of culture.
You don't want us to be the ones taking your pulse. We are that joke from The Simpsons where Mr. Burns was taken to a hospital where he's pronounced dead. He was then taken to a better hospital where his condition was upgraded to alive.
That's kind of us.
A little bit.
But this was, other than the fact that I knew I was going to do Elio and not 28 years later. I was telling my son this one because we watched 28 Days Later together, the three of us, my son and my daughter and I.
That's easily the best of the.
It's my favorite of the three. I can tell you that right now.
Oh yeah, easily.
Spoiler alert! It's the best made of the three. Then we watched 28 Weeks Later, and my son looked at me and he says, "Father," he calls me Father. He said, "Father, why are you doing this to yourself? I know you don't like this." And I said, "Well, I like the first movie. I have never seen the second, and I'll watch the third on Thursday, and that'll be the first time I've seen it since it came out in June." And he was like, "But Father," he called me Father. He says, "But why? Why do you do this?" And I said, "Sometimes, son, you do it because you enjoy it, and sometimes you do it for the content." But also, I saw your comment in the chat, and I think it's worth kind of sharing with the world. Very rarely do I pick something that Robert actually wants to do and enjoys doing, and that he also is sort of here to because he's a slave to loyalty and consistency. But on the occasion, we will come across something that he genuinely enjoys and wants to talk about. It was 28 years later. So I thought, okay, well, this gives me a chance to watch the entire series and do a long road to ruin, and then I can get past all of this, and we'll be up for the Bone Thugs and Harmony or whatever the hell the movie is called.
Bone Temple.
Yeah, and that'll just be a regular damn you Hollywood. So, just give me like a minute or two on not what you think of the films necessarily, but like why you wanted to talk about this, why you were glad that I delayed it a month or two, but put it on the schedule regardless. Like I said, just a minute or two.
Some of this gets into a little bit of like the backstory of the first movie. And so if you don't mind me speaking a little bit to some of the history of that and a few other things as to why this whole series kind of has stuck with me for a while. We got to talk zombies as a genre for a second or two here, if you'll all bear with me. There's a handful of inflection points in these zombie subgenre of film. Because the original zombie movies are all based a little bit more around like hypnosis, voodoo, that kind of stuff. Stuff like White Zombie, starring Bela Lugosi, or I Walked with a Zombie. Things of that nature.
I Walked with a Zombie, the story of Mark's dating life. Ha, cha, 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 cha. I got myself.
I was going to give you the opportunity to find something to say with that one. Actually, I Walked with a Zombie has some really good cinematography, some real nice imagery that plays in it. But anyway, there's a lot of that initially in the zombie subgenre because that's where the term comes from. It's from Haitian voodoo, sort of. That's longer and more complicated. But then we get the next major inflection point comes with George Romero and with Night of the Living Dead. And his sort of spin-offs from that one. And then there's he and the co-writer for Night of the Living Dead had a split, amicable, but a creative difference over what they might want to do next. It's why the rest of the George A. Romero ones don't have Living Dead in the title. It's just Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Land of the Dead, whatever it happens to be. The other ones from the other gentlemen have Living Dead in the title, so that's where you get Return of the Living Dead from the 80s, which I don't know if I imagine you've seen that one, Mark. Even it's the one with the Tar Man is kind of what it's referred to as.
Maybe. I know I've seen Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah. So point being, like, there's that split, and that kind of ushers in the makeup-driven effect, the practical effects heavy version of zombies that we get some from Romero, where sometimes there's science behind it, sometimes there's other stuff, and that's kind of the predominant motif for zombies for a while. And the genre falls out of favor pretty quickly into the 80s. Genres come and go like that. There's never like no zombie movies being made, but everything fluctuates. So the 80s, we get more like the rebirth of the slashers, and then in the 90s, vampires actually come back into the fore. It's even with a lot of some Dracula remakes. Blade comes around and makes vampires a thing again in a lot of respects. But really, what we get like out of the 90s into the early 2000s, and this is kind of the time period we're going to be talking about, you get a lot of the like self-aware stuff. You get Scream. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Sort of the rebirth of the weird teen, not full-on slasher, but pseudo-slasher stuff. That's kind of what's churning around late 90s, early 2000s. There's not a lot of monster movies. Vampires have been infected by Twilight. I say that with no major moral judgments. I'm just saying that's what happened. And it does kind of leave the field open for another subgenre of the horror to kind of come to the fore. The problem is we've all seen zombies by this point. We've seen the Romero stuff. George Romero's still making zombie movies at this point on occasion. But 28 Days Later is the other major inflection point in the zombie subgenre. There's a few of them. There's the early ones, then Romero changes the game, and the game remains the same until Danny Boyle changes it pretty dramatically with 28 Days Later. This is where we get fast zombies. Those weren't really a thing before this. You had all the slow-moving, shambling, let's show off the makeup department's work. That was kind of one of the things there. In this one, they are expressly biological in a way that had not really been done a whole lot before. There'd been occasional like bioweaponry components, but nothing more or less as grounded as this one. So we've got a slightly different take on where zombies come from. We've got an entirely new kind of zombie because slow zombies are scary in their own way. Fast zombies are definitely terrifying in their own way. And people still argue to this day about which is better. It's largely down to personal preference. Both can be done well, both can be done poorly. But it's not a mistake that after 28 Days Later, with Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead, rather, excuse me, he has fast zombies for the most part. It's not a mistake that Robert Kirkman chose to have Rick Grimes wake up in a hospital bed after the world fell apart while he was unconscious. These are not accidents. That's the impact that this movie had on the zombie subgenre. And I was of the appropriate age to be like, you know what? I've kind of had enough vampires when this comes around. I've kind of had enough. No one was making good monster movies at this point in time as a general rule, so those were kind of falling by the wayside. I'm glad they came back to the fore. That's kind of what's replaced zombies once the zombie peak kind of ran its course a handful of years ago. But it is one of the major inflection points for the subgenre, and it helps that it's just an exceptional film. So that's kind of why it's stuck with me. And it's one of those franchises that where the first movie's so good and hit me just right that I will follow this thing through ups and downs. And there's both in the next two movies to talk about. So
let's get into it. We are talking obviously 28 days later, 28 weeks later, and 28 years later, which just came out this past June. What does a zombie movie look like when it's not really about zombies? In 2002, 28 Days Later marked a hard reset for horror, as Robert mentioned. Directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland of Civil War fame, it wasn't about slow-walking corpses, as Robert pointed out. It was about rage, breakdown, and the monstrous potential inside ordinary people. Shot on grainy digital video with handheld cameras and natural light, it felt urgent, real, and deeply psychological. Boyle's Britain wasn't just overrun by infection, it had collapsed inward, exposing militarism, patriarchy, and the thin membrane holding society together. 5 years later, 28 weeks later, took a different path. With Boyle and Garland stepping back, director Juan Carlos Fresnadillo delivered a more conventional sequel, slicker, louder, bloodier. The sole critique was still there, in the form of American military intervention and government failure, but it was buried under spectacle. Gone was the DIY panic of Boyle's lens. In its place, drones, firebombs, and Hollywood-grade body count. Now, nearly 2 decades later, 28 years later brings Boyle and Garland back, and it asks a different question. What happens when the apocalypse becomes history? In this world, Britain remains quarantined, haunted by infection, but the rest of the world has moved on. The fear isn't just the virus, it's isolation, abandonment, and the political uses of containment. The film is slower, more abstract, and according to early critics, less emotionally immediate. But it completes the arc from trauma to militarization to forgetting. So here's why we're talking about this tonight, besides the obvious things we mentioned earlier. These films aren't just horror movies, they're cinematic documents of how our culture processes catastrophe. From 9/11 in Iraq to the pandemic lockdowns and biosurveillance, each entry captures the emotional logic of its era. Whether you love or hate them individually, as a trilogy, they chart something bigger. So tonight on The Long Road to Ruin, we're not just reviewing 3 movies, we're dissecting a 22-year conversation about fear, collapse, which is all the rage these days, and what survives us when society dies. And pay close attention to it because it's happening as we speak. But enough about the end of the world. Let's talk movies. Robert, 28 days later, let's get into it. I love this movie. I really do. It's not one of my favorites or anything, but it's an exceptional movie.
It's great. It's one of the first movies that was shot almost entirely digitally, for budgetary reasons. Fun fact about that one, actually, there is one sequence in 28 Days Later that is shot on conventional film.
Mm-hmm.
It is the ending. That's why it looks brighter, more optimistic, and happier. That's part of the reason. It's straight up on film. Whereas the others are shot digitally, and for a long time, I think that's part of the reason you couldn't find this movie anywhere. They had not printed new DVDs or Blu-rays. It didn't stream anywhere. I think part of that was like the digital quality was poor enough that when put on a modern streaming service, there's a quality to it that was very difficult to
Let me tell you
get
something.
around.
From a principal photography, cinematography point of view, the Blair Witch Project is clearer. Like,
This is
is intentionally grainy.
It is, but it's also a product of digital technology at the time this was shot, not really going above like 360.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of, and then when it's broadcast in digital only, it just winds up looking weird because it's hard to upscale it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of a problem. So I think that's part of the problem. But thankfully, with the release of 28 Years Later, this did get back into the digital marketplace, so you can buy it on Amazon now. Whereas for a long time, you couldn't even buy it. There was a period of like 3 years where you legitimately could not stream or buy 28 Days Later digitally anywhere.
So this is one of those where I really had to like do an Easter egg hunt to find these movies. 28 Days Later, I watched on Pluto. 28 Weeks Later, I watched on Hulu. 28 Years Later is currently PVOD. And the place of choice that I choose to rent my movies from is Amazon, because it's just their interface is the easiest to work with.
Yeah.
So a couple of notes about this movie. One, I love the cinematography of this. It is definitely a masterclass, and your cinematography does not have to look Lord of the Rings pretty.
No.
What it has to do is have a perspective, have an aesthetic, be consistent in that aesthetic, and that this does. I like the fact that it feels like you are part of the campaign. You are part of the adventure, because it has that documentary feel to it. But it's not perfect. And while Cillian Murphy and the other actor in Bruges, Brendan Gleeson, are phenomenal in this, Naomi Harris, the actress is fine. And I'm curious to get your take on this, because we don't always agree, and that's why we do this. To do our weekly banging of the head session.
Not that kind of head banging.
Naomi Harris, I think, is a perfectly serviceable actress. What I don't like is the character writing, which is what I mean when I say, like, this is not a perfect movie. Upon rewatch the other night, both Jonas and I are sitting there watching this. Lily was there too, but she had a different take. I find Naomi Harris's character to be grating. Like, it's less than a month since the zombie outbreak, and she has she has the hardened exterior of like a lifelong combat veteran, except that this was 28 days ago. How are you this hardened, this soulless? And it feels like it was done that way just to give her the arc to where she finds her humanity towards the end. Um and her and Cillian Murphy kind of swap because he's the sensitive soul at the beginning, and the babe in the wilderness, the POV character, and by the end of it, he's he has leaned into his lack of humanity, whereas she softens a bit. But I don't understand how she got there in the first place. They treat her as if she's one of the Marines from Aliens, and I felt like it was a bit pitchy. That it didn't really match. Like, this is the sort of thing where if we catch up to her in 28 weeks later, I can kind of see it. But this soon to the extinction event, and I'm like, why are you this mad? So I'm curious to get your take on that, and if you think I'm completely off base, which is fine. It's a matter of
I don't
opinion.
think you're completely off base. This is one of those instances where you run into some of the shortcomings on Garland's writing.
Yeah, he tends to like rely entirely too much on tropes, and she's way tropey.
Garland is a theme over substance writer.
Which I know you love.
I can take it or leave it.
Yeah, I know.
So her character is there to serve the thematic purposes, and he's just not. He's confident enough, whether you think he should be or not is entirely another matter. But he's confident enough in the overall emotional logic of what's going on and the journey that we're going to go on with these characters that he doesn't want to get too bogged down in the weeds, and he'd rather have a character that maybe some of those questions might linger if you think about it, but in the course of the movie is there to service the goal at the end, the thematic goal in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a choice, not one I always agree with. I could have done with a little bit of her backstory here. I'm kind of with you on that, but the fact that this movie was also shot for like
$1.50.
Pocket change.
Yeah, 2 shillings and a halfpenny.
So there's a lot of like ground that has to be ceded to the logistical realities of this, that maybe there was an idea of having us get more of her story, but it would have cost too much, extended everything too much. Maybe it wound up maybe they shot it and it wound up disrupting too much of the flow of the film, and then you had to kill your baby, as we're also inclined to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. I think it's a little bit of a weakness. That said, I think you do need that character. You need that kind of character here to complete the emotional arc by the end of it, because absent that, this is... It's one of the weaker elements of the movie, but I think without it, the movie overall becomes a lot weaker.
So this isn't a crowd-pleasing movie. I think it's intelligently written in the sense of I definitely think it's a thoughtful movie. It's one that makes you think. But if you're looking for kind of a crowd-pleasing zombie movie, first of all, that's the next one. But
More.
But this one, once you get past the initial set pieces, and then you get to the very end where Cillian Murphy goes fucking, Rambo First Blood
A little.
on the soldiers. Not a lot of zombie in the zombie movie. Which,
No.
as an intellectual and a film critic, I'm fine with. As a popcorn movie watcher who went to watch the the zombies eat the meat sacks, I'm sorely disappointed.
Yeah, I get it. It's again, it's a budgetary constraint thing. I think to the credit of all the filmmakers, they stuck the budget where they needed it.
Yeah.
So
My girlfriend's line here. The opening scene disturbed me so much I left. Yes, she struggled with. You make fun of me. She struggled with the gore of the first few minutes of this movie.
Yeah, when the chimps attack, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's very intense claustrophobic scene. Like, even if you're like fine with gore, that's one of those that really relies on its ability to overstimulate the audience.
Yeah. Especially with the number of people that have just a base knee-jerk emotional reaction to, oh, look at that poor monkey with ape with electrodes in its brain. It's a whole thing. But yeah, this movie, one of the other great things about this movie is the editing choices.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way to use rapid fire editing to build tension and to create the right kind of chaos. But one of the great things about this one, and it's similar to like Mad Max Fury Road, where there's a lot of cuts,
Mm-hmm.
but everything is done in such a way that you, the viewer, don't lose track of the action.
It also creates an urgency.
Yeah.
Embedded in the film. Like you know, it's funny how film can play tricks with your brain. And so through the use of rapid fire editing and the strobe effect, it definitely has an unsettling effect on the audience. You are
There's
affected by what's happening here.
Yeah, there's a couple of scenes in particular. You mentioned the opening, which is one of them. I think if I have like a borderline gold standard for the right use of rapid fire editing in this movie, it's when they arrive at the apartment building and are running up the stairs while being chased, and they meet Brendan Gleeson at the top of the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole bit, once they start getting chased, as Selena's pulling ahead of Jim and he's trying to catch up to her, but he's in the midst of having a minor health issue because he's got no fat on his body and he's a little bit worn out. And they're coming up, and there's some really nice sound work as well with shopping carts being rattled around, and it just works really, really well. And to the point where if you actually pause and think about it, they only go up like 3 flights of stairs. Like they're most of the way up there.
Right.
But the editing and the sound design and the music come together to create this ridiculous high amount of tension in this really short period of time.
I like what the film has to say about 2 things. It's saying the same thing, but it's saying it differently given 2 different sets of people. One, it speaks to the sensitive, humanized people and says, what do you have to do before social contracting and emotional scaffolding completely collapse and they become animals? We like to think ourselves as higher order beings. We are, divined by God, if you believe in that sort of thing, and I know you do. And all of that. But the biological reality is, couple of Jenga blocks from the tower and it all falls down, and this is what his point is with the rage virus, and we're all foaming, snarling, teeth rattling animals. So you look at where Cillian Murphy starts, where he can hardly kill a fly and he's just struggling with everything, and then by the end of it, again, he's fucking John Rambo. But I think the more impactful statement is about women, how women, by and large, are hanging on to civil treatment by a hair's breadth.
It is not going to get too deep into this because there's a couple of other things about this movie in particular I have to talk about briefly near the before we move on. But
yeah, address this and then do that.
Okay. None of the following is my endorsement of any of the following positions, for the record. But the number of women contemporarily who have been fed lines from feminism about the equality of men and women.
You're talking about physical equality.
Physical, yes. Not like, again, this is not a endorsement, but yes, physical equality. I can do anything you can do.
Right. Anything you can do, I can do better.
And
yes, I can.
At this point, a number of disaffected men have begun to take up okay, if you want to be treated equally, when you approach me and behave in a certain way, I'm going to treat you like I would a man.
There's a whole cottage industry on YouTube dedicated to this when men compete equally against women in any sort of physical activity. Just one video after another.
There's that. Well, there is that in the competitions arena.
Mm-hmm.
What's more troubling to me, and I think to a lot of people, is in the just general physical interaction. Because, Mark, if you and I have a disagreement, and we decide that, you know what, words ain't going to do it, one of us is going to wind up making a decision. Am I going to escalate this or am I going to not? There's a line that got bandied about, and it's true, not absolutely, but there's an undercurrent of truth to it that is important. Interactions between men have implicit to them the possibility of violence. Now, again, this is overstated, and people throw it around because it's a nice soundbite more than anything. But it wouldn't be a good soundbite, and it wouldn't resonate if there wasn't a degree of truth to it. I'm not saying men go around looking at each other going, boy, I could beat that guy up. No, generally we don't. But any prolonged interaction, especially if it's a little bit adversarial, we do consider the possibility of physical violence. I know I'm getting to my point.
Our producer in here.
Yeah, and the number of women, especially slightly younger, who grew up with the notion that I can do anything a man can do, while also sort of still existing around a lot of people who behaved according to previous social norms, have found out that if you hit a man in public and he decides that, oh, you're exactly like another man, well, if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. If Mark strikes me in person, I'm going to punch him back. That's just how that goes. That's why we don't so often. Men in general. And enough men have now heard, well, women are just like men, right? Want to be treated equally, right? Well, if you strike me, I'm going to strike back. Whereas 20 years ago, it didn't matter if a woman hit you. You're a man, you exercise restraint. But we have lost that bit of the social contract. So to the point that you raised.
Yes.
When that goes away, boy, is that dangerous.
So there's a scene in the movie, for those that don't know. If you've seen the movie, you kind of know what we're talking about. Maybe you don't remember. But basically, what the soldiers reveal, the great horror of the movie, the twist in the movie, is the soldiers like, we are here. I promised the soldiers that if they obeyed my commands and they stayed loyal to me, I would bring them women for breeding, as we have to repopulate England now. And so Naomi Harris and the young girl show up, and they go, well, it rained. As the rainmaker, I kept my promise.
Indeed.
And the women are like, we are modern women with agency and choice, and this seems like sexual assault you're proposing. And he was like, is it sexual assault when it's the end of the world? Essentially, is where he's coming from. And the thing of it is that I'm making light of it, but they kind of just throw out all the social contracting. And This is what I mean by women's ability to compete in the marketplace of ethics and ideals and mores with men is only held up slightly by that. Because if it goes as it does in this movie, where there's no rules, there's no enforcement, and the men are kind of thinking about their own needs and abstractly the needs to repopulate, the women suddenly became objects. These were not people anymore. They were sexual objects, period, full stop. And Danny Boyle, that's the point that he's making. This whole movie, and then we can move on to the next one. The whole movie.
Well, again, I got a couple of things about this one I need to say that set up some of the stuff I want to talk about with 28 weeks later, but finish the point. So
this whole movie is essentially about it's the book of Job. What happens if you take everything away? What does man do? And his point of view is that man becomes an animal. It treats the lesser sex like objects. It mauls everything around it. It becomes might makes right. That's his point. And I wanted to make the point about what happened to Naomi Harris because the fact that women, by and large, don't seem to realize what a tenuous hold they have on their place with men in the world. And that's not me being sexist. That is me talking about Danny Boyle's point. It's like, hey, ladies, just so you know, this close. You're this close to the Handmaid's Tale at any given time.
A little bit, yeah. And well, the other thing about that is Danny Boyle, this is true through his entire career, mind you.
Hang on, I don't say that as a threat. I say that as a difficulty with the human psyche in the year
Yeah.
of our Lord 2025. That's the
And-
point that I'm making.
And somehow that point has become more prescient since this movie was released because, again, we're starting to see that more and more in modern society. A bunch of somewhat disaffected men going, oh, okay, if you wish to be treated equally, here's how I would treat someone who did this to me.
Yeah,
And it goes badly. It
So what are they-
almost always goes badly because we're
pretty
stupid.
much. All right. So what are
So-
the other points you're making?
A couple of things real quickly. This movie has a lovely sense of melancholy to it.
Mm-hmm.
It has a wonderful humanist whimsy that comes out in scenes. Like their shopping sequence.
Great. I was screaming, "Someone get jerky!"
It's England. I don't know if they have it, but
Mm-hmm. Well, he said nothing you can cook, so that limits your meat product. But you got to get protein, Robert. Protein, sir. Propriety. Get nuts. Get jerky.
Yep. I completely understand. Like their discussion around what kind of alcohol are we gonna take, or
The Brendan Gleeson fondling those bottles of alcohol.
you can't just take any old crap.
I don't get uncomfortable around sexual scenes, but that made me uncomfortable. I'm going to be honest with you.
Parts of this movie are, as mentioned, shot and cut together like frenetic action. The fact that in the same film we also get a bunch of scenes that are shot almost like a David Attenborough nature documentary.
Yeah.
And-
What a beautiful use of landscape.
Yeah. This movie, again, it had no budget really, so to speak. So they couldn't. So if you're going to shoot in a major location, you pay the city and they shut down areas of it so that you can shoot there. Is kind of how this works. If you don't want to deal with all the traffic in the background, normally you can, but so for example, there's a scene in Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise where he goes to an empty Times Square. That production paid for a period of time for Times Square to be shut down and empty so they could shoot that.
Right.
This film could not afford to have parts of London shut down. So what they did, that entire opening scene, or the entire scene with Jim walking around deserted London, they shot at dawn when there's just no one else around. And thankfully it kind of worked out. It's impossible.
Shooing homeless people away. Like, I'll give you a Twinkie. Get the fuck out of here.
Something like that, yeah.
Mm.
Most of their shutdown money went to that scene where they drive down a very famous stretch of road in front of the windmills. And normally that place is like, that road is busy pretty much 24/7. So they only had enough money to shut it down for one shot. Unfortunately, it worked. So they got a great one. But it's impossible to watch Jim walk around London deserted and not have two things evoked in my mind. One, they did very deliberately. They very deliberately evoked 9/11 with the wall of missing people and everything. Very famously, that was a thing in New York, and that was deliberately invoked. What wound up being just a thing that they stumbled into years later is I can't watch that and not think of the COVID pandemic these days.
Very much, this trilogy is a COVID fable.
And the fact that two of them came out so long before, like 15 years before.
What do you know, Danny Boyle?
Well, the first one actually wound up coming out in concert unintentionally with an outbreak of, I think it was hoof and mouth disease.
Mm-hmm.
That or mad cow in the UK. It's one of those two. Forgive me if I can't remember which one. That caused a lot of problems. There was a bunch of livestock that had to be destroyed and people got sick. So it did actually wind up unintentionally coinciding with something. But watching him wander around deserted London and somewhere in my head going, 4 years ago, you could have done that. And there would have been nobody there.
Yeah.
And I bring that up not to make a grand statement about COVID. That'll wait for the next couple of movies when it becomes more relevant. But it is a beautiful, haunting scene. Last thing I want to say: major kudos to the people playing the infected and their motion coach, because the priest in this one, you see him very briefly, but he's the one who attacks Jim when he's in the church. He actually winds up being the body coach for all of the infected when we get to 28 years later.
Oh, interesting.
And adding walking like a zombie takes some doing, whether that's a slow-moving dead zombie, see Shaun of the Dead by way of example if you want to see a lot of that. But doing it as a fast-moving zombie, like there's a real physicality that has to go into how this particular virus works, and to constantly give off the impression that like there's energy and something inside of you that just can barely be contained by your skin is a heck of a thing. So kudos to everyone involved in that. Yeah, the original ending was different. If you've never seen the alternate ending to 28 Days Later, they used some of the footage ultimately for the ending that we got, the theatrical ending. The original ending sees Naomi Harris and Hannah take Jim to a medical facility after he's shot, but they can't save him and he dies. And they head back out with a renewed sense of hope and optimism given what he demonstrated to them. I prefer the theatrical ending personally, though I deeply appreciate the other one. Yeah, it's not quite one of my desert island movies if you only give me like 5, but if you give me 10, this is making that cut for me. I find endlessly rewatchable, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but one of the most important zombie movies, and another reminder that the horror genre can be really impactful when tackled by a director with vision and ability. Never mind the fact that Danny Boyle spent 2 decades almost swearing up and down he didn't make a zombie movie with this.
Well, the next one is a zombie movie. We have a change of director, and this is everything I hate about movie trilogies, movie franchises. There's always a chapter. Generally, it's the third one. This time, it's the second, where no one knows why the first one seems to have, hit people, why it was as effective as it was. No one seems to know why anyone likes the first one, and they go with the low-hanging fruit dummy answer of zombies. So this next one is a zombie movie.
Yeah, just for the record, 28 Days Later comes out in 2002, has a budget of $8 million, and it makes $82.8 million. So wild success financially.
Yeah, this next one is $15 million on a $72 million box office, so not as much. I mean, it's still profitable.
No, but if you're curious, like why we got a sequel in relatively short order, that for the early 2000s, this is short order.
So
that's why.
Yeah, this next one was directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo. He has also made after 28 Weeks Later. Prior to 28 Weeks Later, he wrote and directed Intacto. He had a couple of short films before that. He will go on to make Damsel, and Robert won't even watch it.
Yep, this guy could be thrown off a balcony.
So, I don't hate this movie or anything like that.
No, I don't hate it either.
It's just, other than the fact that it's the same zombies from the first movie, and it's a continuation of that story, this is 28 Days Later in name only. This is very much my issue with this is it takes it's cosplaying the first movie.
Okay.
More than that, it's kind of like when the kid dresses up in the Star Wars costume and he has the lightsaber and he's standing in front of the movie and he's having a lightsaber duel with the other nerd he's with.
Yeah, I've seen that commercial a few times.
But that's this movie. This movie is those kids. It's wearing the costume and it's doing the moves, but it's not the movie. It's just doing an imitation of it, and it doesn't even know what it's imitating. This is a standard. I mean, it's well made. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm gonna sound like I hate this movie, and it's not necessarily the case. I hate that it's such a wild departure from the first movie, because while the first movie very much had something to say, and like I said before, would actually probably upset people because it's not as much of a zombie movie as you might hope it to be. And it's like they overcorrected with the next one, where it's
A little bit.
all it is. Does it have something to say? Yeah, kinda, but not as loudly or coherently as the first one. This one is just a bog standard, very nicely shot, fairly well acted, zombie gory horror movie. And I remember Jonas asking me, like, what did you think of this? And I'm like, I'm thinking I love Robert, because otherwise I don't know why I'm putting myself through this. And it's not because like these are gross. It's because this is the last thing I'll say, and then you can kind of cut in.
Yeah.
I just find this second one to be thoroughly uninteresting, and doubly so because the first and the third one are exceptionally interesting for different reasons.
I would agree with all of that. Look, 28 weeks later, if you just saw it in isolation, if you didn't see the first one and you just saw this one, it's not a bad movie. It's really not. It's not, but because it's part of a trilogy, the other two of which come from Danny Boyle, who is a not perfect, mind you, but one of the better directors working.
Quentin Tarantino makes Kill Bill 1 and 2, and the third one's directed by Michael Bay.
Yeah, a little. I might. Yeah, that's about right. Ultimately, so
did you like Kill Bill and what all the things it had to say? Yeah, but what I really liked was Uma Thurman hitting people with a sword. Great, here's 3 hours of that. I'm Michael Bay.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe here. Now, there's a few good things about 28 weeks later that, independent of anything else, I do want to praise. First of all, the opening sequence I love to death. It is one of my favorite things in this entire trilogy, is that opening bit in 28 weeks when they're in the darkened house just trying to avoid being noticed. And then they open the door to let a small child in, and no good deed goes unpunished in this world. So the infected attack, and Robert Carlyle tries to get his wife out with him, and she won't leave the kid. And then he gets to the point where, well, I can stay and die with you, or I can leave.
That nearly caused a fist fight between Jonas and Lily.
I imagine she wanted him to stay, and Jonas was like, no, he did the right thing.
Uh-huh. That's exactly how that broke out.
And then his run to the boat. There's some really well shot stuff there. If you see nothing else about this movie, that opening segment works as a wonderful short film in the world of 28 Days Later, if nothing else.
Yeah.
That is tremendous. So big kudos to everyone involved in as far as that goes. For those of you who don't know the story of this one, the infected wind up starving themselves out because they're stupid zombies, and the human body still has to function. So then UN forces, led by the United States, hey, we turned Great Britain into a colony briefly, show up to try and start rebuilding, repatriating, finding either survivors or people who are out of the country and are coming back in. And things go sideways because the wife from the opening sequence winds up to she's a carrier of the disease, but asymptomatic in herself. Winds up accidentally passing it on to her husband. The virus breaks out.
Hang on, this is a major problem I have with this movie. That's no accident. This idiot sneaks past guards to go be with her, and they kiss, and of course, that goes terribly badly, and then he gets bitten, and that's the end of that. And I remember saying to both my kids, like, you're telling me, because by this point they know that she's a carrier.
Yeah.
That's my problem with this. I know you're trying to explain like the whole plot, but like this is a major problem I have with this movie. This is the worst part of it for me, because
I do completely agree. There's a number of ways they could have gotten another outbreak without it being quite that dumb.
Yeah, this is everybody involved in the making, involved in that scene has to be rock stupid in order for this to be successful. And like my daughter kind of like yelled at me about it. She was just like, he just wants to see his wife. Like, no, you don't understand. They know she's got infected blood, so they're going to use her to make a vaccine. She's the holy grail. She's a pot of
Who
gold. She's
Idris
the Ark of
Elba
the Covenant.
But Idris Elba's line is, "You can do your experiments on her corpse,"
Sure.
because
Get on
Idris
with it.
Elba is unreasonable military man in this movie. Very briefly.
You can get on with it, motherfuckers. Listen, my problem is they'd have had like 20 guards outside of her.
Oh yeah.
That guy wasn't getting anywhere near her. First of all, you can't get on a fucking plane in this world without a proctal exam and a pint of blood, let alone, but this guy, she's utterly left unguarded. There's nobody around. It's a ghost town. This highly valuable blood specimen in a zombie outbreak is unguarded. And then, like, again, it's like the Snicker wrapper in fucking Jurassic World Afterbirth, where, like, our security measures here are this poor. This idiot could walk around a clean room with a fucking Snickers bar like they wouldn't have shot him out or beat him with bats outside had he even tried that 100 yards of the target area where the dinosaur is. And here, this guy is able to just waltz in, dick in hand, to go see his wife, and no one's paying any attention to it. And Lily was just like, oh, maybe they were distracted. No, you don't understand how the world works then. There's no way they'd have let the infected attack the camp to protect this woman. That's how important she was. And it was stupid to do it any other way.
Bless you, Lily, for being willing to go with the emotional journey of this movie, despite how stupid it is. I say that with no moral judgment, no condescension whatsoever.
Deep affection. God, it's still.
I kind of miss being able to do that personally. Like I am so far gone from that I can't anymore. But
well, look at where I am. Like, and
I drug you with me. It's
like I'm not nearly as dead inside as you're getting there, but I'm not nearly as dead inside as you are. And I'm like, this is dumb. I'm out of like, that's the thing is, like, I'm never out of the movie. As much as I thought Naomi's character was great, Naomi Harris's character is grating, I'm never out of the movie. I'm out of the movie when this happens. This is dick in hand, and I'm throwing bottles of piss at the screen going, come on! This is dumb. All right, continue.
So virus breaks out. They try to contain it. Doesn't go well. They firebomb parts of the city. Not enough. So our primary group is Jeremy Renner, God bless him, best part of this movie, for the record. He's trying to get the two kids and the chief medical officer to Harold Perrineau flying around in a helicopter because the kids might have some of the same genetic markers that their mother had, and that could be the key to developing a cure. So everyone dies except the kids because body count. They get to Harold Perrineau. He takes them across the channel to France. Then we get somehow things broke down over there, and we see the infected in Paris at the Eiffel Tower. Is where the movie ends narratively. So I want to say a few good things about this film because, again, there are a few good things.
That subway scene is rock hard. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that one, again, the opening scene, the subway sequence and this one got me thinking of COVID actually more than 28 years later did for some reason. Actually, I can tell you exactly why. Because more than the lockdowns around COVID, I remember, don't get me wrong, I remember those. But I remember like the people who panicked over other human beings being within 6 feet of them. I remember how quickly, more so than the respiratory illness, the behavior spiraled out of control in places.
Yeah.
And the rage virus in that subway scene when they're all stuck down there and suddenly here's one infected. Yeah, that kind of hit, that kind of pinged a few things in my memory. Like, oh boy. It helps that it's very well done to kind of go along with things. Again, I wanted to give credit to Jeremy Renner. He is doing a proto Hawkeye. Like, he could have just sent this in as his audition for Clint Barton, and I think they would have cast him. Because he's doing a lot of the same stuff, but it's one of those weird things where if you watch someone who, you can find like actors who became bigger stars earlier in their careers, and watching them even early on, you can easily see why they went on to be bigger deals. Renner in this movie shines because he's that good. I'm not saying Oscar contender or anything, but he's one of the big things that everyone remembers from this film. And I think it helps that his character gets a pretty unfortunate ending, to put it mildly. So that's a positive. Yeah, that's kind of it. This movie's a bit overlong for what it is. It way over relies on the infected. It like you said, it leans way. Let me put it another way. The first movie, 28 Days Later, is very British. 28 Weeks Later is very American
Yeah.
in sensibility,
It's
for
very
better
much
and for
that
worse.
Eddie Izzard joke of any British film does any bit of business, America will, it's like a room with a view of the kitchen, and then in America it's like it's a room with a view of hell.
Yeah, that line is very apropos here. Last thing I wanted to say, and this is one of my big critiques of this film. The positioning of Robert Carlyle as this very detestable character when all he did was react normally. It is a strength of the writing that he's not just a cowardly character. Like, he tries to save his wife. He tries to do the right things, but you're in a terrible situation. So when your options are die with your wife or run for your life, he made the same choice that the 90% of people would. He tried. He made a good faith effort. He didn't scamper as soon as they showed up and say to hell with all of this.
Like, shoved his wife in front of the infected.
Yeah,
and ran.
he's not, Bobby Heenan hiding behind sensational Sherry. Right? He's not doing one of those numbers. So the writing is smart enough to not make him utterly detestable, but then in tone, everyone treats him that way. And so it's a giant bit of dissonance in the writing that really hurts the overall film at the end of the day. But I like Robert Carlyle, so he...
It's so funny because we tend to blame the 2015 Me Too woke and all of this other stuff. It's like the shit was there.
Yeah.
Like the seeds of what the next decade of film will become are already percolating in the soil in the early 2000s. We have some comments here really quick.
Mm-hmm.
So this friend here, don't get me wrong, 28 Days and 28 Weeks are fine movies, but if I can just say one thing, 28 Years is better than both other movies combined. We're gonna get there shortly, pal. But thank you for sharing. Yep.
For the record, not my assessment, but you're entitled to it, and I don't think I don't think that is an unreasonable stance to take. So
it is definitely better than 28 Weeks Later.
Yeah, 28 Weeks Later, again, there's a couple of scenes in isolation that are very good, but ultimately this movie is missing a lot of the quiet moments. It's missing a lot of the humanist touch that Danny Boyle brought to the first one.
Yeah.
And it never quite overcomes that, but...
Well, it's funny. It's like this first movie makes so much money. What if we do a real big crowd pleaser? Then it's sure to make millions of dollars. And it's like, nope. Yeah. Missed the ball, hit the umpire, you did.
Yeah, a little bit. So here's the thing about, you might be asking yourself, why is there a giant gap between 28 Weeks Later and 28 Years Later? What happened to 28 months later, Mark? What happened to it? Well, production hell happened to it. You see, 28 Weeks Later is still a financial success. It's not as big, it's not as profitable as the first one, but it still makes money. It's still well thought of, more or less. There's clearly places you can go with this, given what happens. But it enters production hell. There's ideas for it. They tried to get it 28 months later going. Issues of rights, issues of creative vision, all the fun stuff that leads to stuff lying dormant. And it drags on until by the time we finally do get 28 years later, you couldn't do 28 months later. It's been too long. So they just take some of the ideas from that one and jump forward an appropriate amount of time, more or less. So there's your interstitial between... There's why we got 4 years between the first two, give or take, and 2 decades between the second ones.
So yeah, now we're on the 28 years later, which just came out this past June. It had a budget of 60 million. It did 150 million. I think it actually beat Ilio in its weekend, if I remember correctly.
I believe it did, if memory serves. Yeah, it's
I remember talking about that because we were just like, "Oh, poor Pixar, can't catch a break."
well, some of that's their own doing, but that's for another discussion later.
We've already had it. So I'll tell you, I like this movie better than the second one. I think this is closer in spirit to the first one.
Helps
But I
that you
think
got
this-
both Danny Boyle and Alex Garland back for it.
Yeah. So this whole thing takes place. Like there's a colony that's on a.
Oh, do you want? May
Yeah.
I?
Go, yeah. Just before you do,
Okay.
because I want to set this up appropriately. I will tell you that this was the first time in these three movies where I didn't understand the world I was living in anymore. Like,
Okay.
There's stuff that happens in this movie where I have to keep going to either the wiki or ChatGPT. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, there are certain things that are happening in the movie that I can kind of point to and go, okay, that's my emotional hook here, and that's what I'm going to focus on. This is the first one where the fantasy world building, high sci-fi horror elements were utterly confusing to me, and like I very much feel, look, if you got this and you think I'm a toaster oven, more power to you. I'll take that. But this, I feel like Danny, and I'll tell you this is backed up by some of the critics. So we're all toaster ovens together, I guess. There is definitely sort of a muddled, coherent message coming out of this movie and a coherent, muddled presentation that I think a lot of people are struggling with. So where it looks good, it's acted well, but I'm not entirely sure if what he was trying to say got through. And at times, I'm not even entirely sure what he's saying. Also, I'm not entirely sure this world makes any sense to me anymore, given all the things that have happened. So with that said,
Okay.
take it away. Straighten out this Gordian knot for me.
I will do what I can to help you with that. So this is the one. This is the one where part of the world building makes me go on my COVID tangent. And I promise we're not going to delve too deep into this, but just it's impossible not to look at the writing choices and not think they weren't informed by that. So that's why I have to bring it up when I get to it. So anyway, so 28 years after the initial outbreak is where we get to 28 years later. Because we do have to kind of do a damn you Hollywood for this. So actually, I do get to do a full plot synopsis. Yay me. So the infection was.
That's why you're here, Robert. That's why you're here.
Yeah, I know. I could be replaced with AI, with a text to speech and Chat GPT, but
And a cute girl. Don't ever forget the cute girl.
if you put an anime girl as the avatar for the text to speech, yeah. So the infection was stopped on mainland Europe. And if you delve into some of the wiki and some of the information on the 28 years later website, they tell you they just nuked Paris. It was spreading. They couldn't stop it. Literal nuclear bombing to stop it. And the way the world has decided to go about this is, okay, everything on the British Isles, nobody touches it. Nobody. Leave it alone. Nature has reclaimed it. Stay over there. There are still people there, as we see. That's where the movie comes from. But everything outside of that has progressed normally since 2004. When did the first one come out? 2002? Yeah.
Two.
Everything else has progressed normally since 2002, 2004-ish. So keep that in mind. Our story follows one of the surviving colonies on the British Isles. Our opening scene is kind of an homage to 28 Weeks Later, where a small child's group of people are attacked. He goes to see his dad, who's a priest, who's gone insane, who hides him away, and then gets attacked by the infected because he believes this is divine judgment. Then we jump forward, and our primary group
messaging of the anti-religion messaging is a bit heavy-handed.
It's going to be more so in the sequel. We'll talk about that when we get to it. Hang on. Believe me, we'll get to that. So, because I don't think Garland and Danny Boyle have like overt anti-religious beliefs.
They are skeptics, but to
Yes.
a large degree.
Well, I'm not talking about like I should rephrase that. I don't think they're trying to get an anti-religious message across.
Sure.
I don't think that's a big part of what they're doing. I think it's a part of life, and consequently, it's a part that they feel compelled to discuss in some
Sure.
degree. But moving on. So we follow Spike, who is our primary character that we're going to follow. He is with his dad, Aaron Taylor Johnson, in full-on Craven the Hunter physique and mode. You can tell they were shot around the same time. He is taking his first trip from their island to the mainland. This is a big deal. He's 12 years old. It's time for his coming of age. So they live on a small island off the coast. It's attached to the mainland via a causeway that's accessible at low tide. So they go out. This is where we get a little bit more world building. We see a few different kinds of infected. Now the virus has evolved over time, as they are wont to do. We see some that have developed eating bugs. They are big, bloated, low to the ground, and we encounter a few of them. They kill a few of them. We go scavenging around. We see a herd of deer. Yeah, it is. And the second one will be more of that, but more on that in a minute or two. Then we see a giant herd of deer because nature's starting to reclaim things. Then we encounter an alpha. These are a subset of the infected that have evolved to metabolize the virus to be like a steroid for them. So they are huge, they are ripped, and they have rudimentary intelligence. So these are the alphas will attract kind of a pack of other fast infected, and they will feed them and guide them and try to keep them from hurting themselves too much.
They also apparently mate.
We'll get to that. Yeah, that's a thing. We'll get to it, sort of. So they encounter an alpha and they wind up staying out late, but they make it back. The alpha chases them across the causeway. They are saved at the gates of their civilization, of their little settlement. They go in and the kid is unhappy because Aaron Taylor Johnson understands that the truth is important, but so is the story. So he's telling a story about his kid's first time out, which has true elements to it and is somewhat exaggerated as well, because both these things are equal and are important. And Spike's like, but he's lying. The truth. And everyone around him like, kid, you're 12. Yes, the truth's important. Don't forget it. You don't have to tell it you don't have to tell nothing but the truth the whole time. The story and the community is important. We wind up with more conflict between Spike and his dad because teenage boys and their fathers have conflict. Who'd have thought? This one is exacerbated by his mother, Jodie Comer. Does great work here, by the way. One of the highlights of this movie is her
What
acting.
a treasure as an actress. We talked about her with the motorcycle,
Bike Riders.
the bike riders. Yeah, I almost said the Motorcycle Diaries. That's a whole other movie.
Whole other movie. That's lionizing Che Guevara because we need more of that.
Yes.
Anyway.
She's great. I talked about how great she is in the Bike Riders. Like, she's because she's not in sexy movies, but she's such a phenomenal actress. Like, nobody remembers she's awesome.
Yeah, so she's the mother and she's suffering from dementia, something similar. It's brain cancer, which, I clocked, and I imagine you did as well, but So Spike is and Aaron Taylor Johnson has started having an affair because my wife is dying of brain cancer, and I have
Newt Gingrich disease.
Well, he also has to deal with the stress of it all, and I'm more sympathetic to him in this than I am to a lot of people in similar situations. But
to Newt Gingrich specifically?
Yes. Specifically Newt Gingrich. But there's a little bit of conflict there, and Spike winds up hearing from both another elder guy on the island and his dad about a doctor who's on the mainland. This is Ray Fiennes' character, who is our Kurtz stand-in, because there's always a Colonel Kurtz character in an Alex Garland movie. He loves Apocalypse Now. It's one of those things that you can't unsee once it's been pointed out to you about his work. So Spike sets fire to their storage shed, the community storage shed, seems like a big deal, and smuggles his mother out to go see the doctor to try and get help because he's 12. And as they're going through, they stumble across a soldier from one of the NATO or UN patrol boats that crashed, and a few people wound up on the shore. Most of them die. One of them lives long enough to meet up with these two. There's a little bit of world building, a little bit of comedy as this 20-year-old kid who's grown up in the modern world interacts with Spike, who's grown up in what's left of England. And there's some funny stuff there. He winds up dying when they're attacked by another alpha on a train because they go there. There's a pregnant infected woman who gives birth. She doesn't attack Jodie Comer, and Jodie Comer shows up because female solidarity. I only half kid. This baby's born. They stop it from getting infected. And then the alpha over this particular pod of infected shows up and is like, "Rawr, kill, give me back my baby," is what is heavily implied. And he kills our poor Swedish boy, just tears his head off. Starts chasing Spike and
Do you like Predator? Did you want to see more of that sort of thing?
Little bit.
28 years later.
Starts chasing Spike and Isla. They are saved by Ray Fiennes and his voodoo. I kid. Like he has a very powerful sedative that he shoots into this big guy, and it knocks him out on his feet. And Ray Fiennes, who is another glorious highlight for this movie, by the way. I love Ray Fiennes' work. So he takes them to where he has made his home, where the fire is always burning. It is the Bone Temple, his monument to death and life. And I can talk about some stuff that I really like about that later. I just got to get to the plot. So they go there, and the doctor examines Jodie Comer and says, "Yeah, you've got cancer. It's metastasized. It's everywhere. It's in your brain. It's in your lymph nodes. You got it all, lady." Like, this is like stage 4.75. Like, I got nothing. And Spike goes, "But you're a doctor. Isn't there medicine in the old hospitals?" And poor Ray Fiennes has to tell this child, even if she was in a real hospital in the real world, by this point, all they can do is give her morphine, kid. Like, there's nothing I can do other than ease her pain. There's a very tearful goodbye between the two of them, and Ray Fiennes euthanizes her. Spike then takes the baby, who he names Isla, back to the colony, leaves it there, and he says, "I'm going to continue my walkabout because I feel like this is something I have to do. I'm still figuring out who I am. I'm still a 12-year-old boy." And if the movie had ended there, I'd have felt really good about it. It continues for long enough for Spike to encounter Jimmy from the opening bit.
The Cockney Power Rangers.
The Euro Trash Power Ranger Sentai Hour shows up. And this bothered me more because I understand what they're doing thematically and where they're going to go with it. I really do. And I think it's a good direction, but something about the execution of all of this just really rubbed me the wrong way. Anyway, so our Jimmy Savile stand-in, which is a real deep cut reference to UK culture, shows up and says to Spike, "I'm Jimmy. You've seen my name carved into hanging upside down infected a little bit. Nothing bad will come of this. Pay no attention to the inverted cross on my chain. Let's be pals." And that's where the movie ends, and presumably where Bone Temple will pick up, because 28 years later is actually the start of another trilogy that will be 28 years later, the Bone Temple, and the third one because they shot 28 years later and Bone Temple back to back. Bone Temple is not directed by Alex Garland. It's directed by Nia DaCosta. And if that sends a shiver down your spine, it probably should. And not a good one. But yeah, that's where it ends. So it's kind of setting up the first part of another trilogy. And since we're doing this one in particular, a little bit more Damn You Hollywood style, I'm going to stop talking and let Mark talk about the movie.
So I like it more than the second one. This one actually feels like a 28 days later movie. I think I struggled with it because I wasn't quite like your explanation made sense. Oh, okay. The infected are just evolving, and they have to eat or they'll die. So some of these have evolved to eat bugs, and this is why they're bloated and look the way that they do. You talking about how they metastasize the metabolized the virus. So now they're all like, WWE wrestlers. It's fine.
Vince
Okay.
McMahon would love all of the alphas.
Yeah, he'd put them all in a fucking stable.
He'd
then-
also have ensured they stayed nude so that we could see the giant prosthetic dongs flopping around.
That's all I heard about from my son, by the way. He was like, I've seen it. I'm like, all right, good. Okay. Then I saw it and I was like, I've seen worse. So anyway,
Yeah, it's really not that gratuitous. Like, it's there, but
so a lot of the stuff with, I mean, like, I know we make fun of Aaron Taylor Johnson, but like I said, he is a victim of whatever project he's in. So when he's in Kraven the Hunter, he sucks. When he's in this, he's good. That's Aaron
when he's
Taylor
in this or
Johnson.
Bullet Train, he's good. Like, he's not a
Yeah.
bad actor.
Right. He's just absolutely a victim of whatever project he chooses. The kid, I started to think more of as, like, he has a very nice arc. He's bumbling in the beginning, he's unsure of himself, and by the end, he was like, I don't know what I am, but I know what I'm not. And, and he's off on a journey. I think I'll be curious to see what they do with him in The Bone Collector. I'm curious to see what the next steps of his journey are, but that this was about him, and he's your POV character, and the question being asked of this is, what do you do when you're presented with this world? Do you lean in? Do you become an animal? Do you maintain your humanity? And this is his struggle. This is his central conflict.
And that's going to be where we go with the second one, is Jimmy showing him like the worst side of things.
Yeah, it's the old Pleasure Island thing. So I thought it was insane they only used bows, and like you only get one shot and then you get overrun. I mean, bullets need production, and if you as do guns. Also, I was thinking about that with the first one. It was like, you can't make this movie in the United States. We all have weapons. We're heavily armed people.
That's one of the things that George Romero tackles a little bit in some of his movies.
Well, I was thinking even more like Zombieland.
Yeah.
They're all walking around with guns.
Yeah, it's why the first and third work a little bit better, is they have very distinctive British sensibilities about them in a lot of ways.
So the guy who's been commenting on YouTube, they could have brought a club or something. Well, they're using arrows because they're projectile weapons.
And I think the other reason you don't see a lot of melee work is because we spend so much time with Spike. And if you give a 12-year-old a club and tell him to fight me off, that ain't working so well.
Yeah. So anyway, this is my Yoda shouldn't have a lightsaber argument. Can we please understand how melee weapons work? Anyway, so things I liked about this movie: Aaron Taylor Johnson's acting, Jodie Comer's acting, the cinematography is still great. England's a beautiful country. It's really weird because like when you think about England, you always get like this. My daughter brought up the aesthetic of the first one is very punk rock, and punk rock and dystopia have a shared history together.
Yeah.
This is more Planet of the Apes. More specifically, the more recent Planet of the Apes movie.
Yeah. Okay.
Where look at the natural beauty of this planet when civilization is washed away, which I like. I mean, like, do I want to go back to living in the caves? No. Am I a conservationist? Not necessarily, though. I'm really against mass polluting when it can be avoided. I think it's a reasonable stance. So I like nature. Says the city boy. I like beautiful landscapes, and England, and like I said, England's a beautiful country, and this movie reminds you of that. It's a good use of the landscape, the way Lord of the Rings used New Zealand as an example. The infected are interesting looking. Now that I have some more context, I can appreciate them more. Beyond that, I think, now that we're talking about it, I'm hyper focusing on what do you do when presented with a world turned upside down? Do you descend into madness or, in violence, or do you maintain your humanity? But now this feels like an unfinished story.
It is intentionally so. It's
right,
but
I hate that sort of thing, Robert, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And you know why, but I'm doing this for a fact. Make the movie you're making. Don't make the movie you're intending to make. Like, I understand this is the first part of a trilogy, but unless you've got it signed on the dotted line and you're doing Lord of the Rings and you're shooting all three at the same time, you don't know if you're going to get a second one.
Well,
I mean,
again,
you do, but you see what I'm saying? Like, I just wish we would go back to the days of making encapsulated product, and if you're graced enough with success, with financial success, and you want to do another one, but don't make that, don't bet on that being the case, especially now when a successful film is a tenuous bet. Ask the people who made Fantastic Four, First Steps, and Superman. Oh, and by the way, you should see the comments I got when I took our discussion about that from Monday, made that a TikTok.
I
Oh
saw.
lordy!
I'd be happy to go through those comments with you at some point because I
Maybe
also
I'll-
saw that your reel got cut off because you went longer than the allotted time.
Oh, why'd you watch it on Facebook?
I tried Instagram too, and it still did the same thing. I might have to go.
Because Meta is the same on both, and yes, you only get a minute and 30 seconds, which is why, like, if it gets close to a minute and 30, I'll still put it there. But like my ones that are 5 minutes, I don't even bother anymore.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
so yeah, I would. Well, they did shoot 1 and 2 back to back, so they had
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
3 they're already making, so
I know this doesn't totally fit the thing that I'm making. I think it's more of an overall critique about modern film.
oh yeah,
Please just make an encapsulated story, for fuck's sake. And this doesn't feel like that. So TV is not movies. Movies is not TV. If you're trying to make an overlong episode of television, I get rubbed the wrong way. And nobody wants to rub me the wrong way. I guarantee that. Your thoughts, sir?
no, I don't disagree with you. And like I said, if they had cut this with his monologue and we hadn't met Jimmy,
You're right.
I think that's a strong standalone movie, and then you could use the Jimmy stuff at the opening of the sequel.
Which is what
But-
they should have done.
I'm not in charge of that. I don't have to create a stinger for another movie that they felt they had to include. So
Right.
I'm
And don't
just
get me wrong, because I know somebody listening to this is to be like, "What, did you not like it or something?" No, I loved it actually. I was laughing my ass off at it because of the use of music, and when the Power Rangers aesthetic of the fighting style. I'm like, this is all great stuff. Utterly misplaced in this fucking movie. There was this tonal whiplash like I hadn't seen in quite some time, and it annoyed the piss out of me.
I'm kind of with you on that. Again, I understand thematically what they're going for with that and where they're going to go with it. And fair play, that's a perfectly valid way to take the story. But it felt really out of place, and it really left me a tad sour. Yeah, I'll read this one. They could have done the Jimmy fight during or after the credits. I would have been okay with it happening during the credits, personally.
Like, because we know we're getting a second one, that would have made more sense. Like, I mean, I know we're all kind of sick of the Marvel after credit scene, but it's a part of the culture now. Deal with it. So end the movie with his monologue, show a minute or two of credits, and then a mid-credit scene is that. Or even better, wait till the credits are all the way done and say, "Coming soon, the Bone Collector," and and
Temple.
they show that, whatever, coming soon, but the giant boner, and then they show that scene.
There was a stinger before the credits at the end of Back to the Future 2 for Back to the Future 3.
Right.
They could have done something like that. And
I think in the re-release of The Empire Strikes Back, they showed a clip of Return of the Jedi. I think at the time it was Revenge of the Jedi.
it was Revenge of the Jedi originally, but they
Mhm.
changed the title because...
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think when they showed the stinger for the third movie, it was Revenge of the Jedi.
Yeah. So I'm in agreement with you on that. It felt weird. This is a movie that for me starts very strong. The first act is very good.
Yeah.
Then it meanders a little in the second. The second's still okay, but it meanders a bit. And unfortunately, the third, while it is emotionally resonant, it really struggles in the very ending. Again, it just did not sit right with me.
The more we're talking about it, I think I think an awful lot these days about the way that the culture of parenting, and and we're kind of dealing with the aftermath of a wave of overparenting, helicopter and lawnmower parenting, that sort of thing. And I'm doing a lot of talking these days on social media about letting your kids experience the world in a way that they will either fail or succeed. That isn't the point. The point is to let them experience it so that they learn. and you're there to make sure they don't go too far over the edge in any direction. And I'm thinking about this kid's journey of, it's a metaphor from, at least from where I was coming from while I was watching the movie, and as we're talking about it, of he's in this very sheltered place, and he outgrows this sheltered place. He's like, this isn't a good fit for me. I need to, this is the Truman Show. I need to sail, and I hit the wall. This is all of these stories about kids kind of throwing off the yoke of their parents and trying to find their own identity. And that's what I feel like this movie is a metaphor for. That the guy said it earlier in our chat here. This is a coming of age story in more ways than one. This is absolutely about that maturation process that a lot of people don't get to go through because they're, traumatized, throughout their youth and and parentified. So they don't get the very important, very important developmental stage of developing your own personality. Who are you as a person? And I think this is what a lot of people struggle with now. A lot of Gen Z and elder millennial folks out there, probably Gen X, but we're close to perfect, so who knows? Where because some of us lose that part of our lives, we struggle as adults on morals, ethics, emotional scaffolding, coping skills, because we don't get that we never got that opportunity as kids. So this is like that kid's journey of ascending into adulthood fully formed with good scaffolding. The more I talk about it, the more, but that's me taking a lot out of the movie as opposed to what the movie is presenting.
Well, I don't think you're wrong, because a lot of your analysis is very well supported. You're dealing with a character in Spike who is presented with two sort of extremes initially with his parents. Aaron Taylor Johnson is he's not full on militant, but he doesn't see the infected as humans. He sees them as, there's no more mind to them, there's no more soul to them, they are dangerous, and frankly, killing them is a mercy to them.
I was going to say they're alligators or bears, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they are wild animals to be encountered and to be avoided or dealt with if necessary.
Right.
And Jodie Comer is, by contrast, very, very humanistic about it. She doesn't want her son to go. He's too young for this, and so Spike is stuck between those two kind of extremes, and it's actually a bit more with Ray Fiennes that we see the way forward that he seems to more adopt, which is an acknowledgement that yes, the infected are dangerous, and yes, I will have to defend myself, but if I forget that these were people, then I lose something very important to myself. And
which is a lesson about how we're currently interacting with each other as people, that one side seems to forget the other political side are people still.
Both sides do it at this point, and it's gross and dangerous, and that's a whole other thing. But Ray Fiennes kind of speaks it out in two different Latin phrases fairly simply. One of them is memento mori, remember that you must die. It's an important thing. But more important almost is to remember love, to remember life, to remember what makes life worth living and what makes it important.
If I may, I was doing a couples therapy last night, and I said to the guy, I said, the challenge has been put in front of you. Stop drinking and spend time with your family. Do it or don't, but that's the challenge. And I looked over at the wife and I said, what do you think? You're perfect and you don't have homework? Your homework is this: be kind. It'll cost you nothing. You don't have to earn it. It comes with the human starter kit. Show your husband kindness. Like, it's not that hard. And that's what you're talking about, like, that's why I said, like, kindness is such an essential part of, like, the human anatomy, the human way of being, and it's often neglected. It's like fruit that dies on the vine, of rot. Mm-hmm. And it's like, people have to remember that without kindness, you don't get to social contracting. It's social contracting that like builds civilization. And Jesus Christ, why are we losing these things? I say in a film discussion.
Well, good film discussion engenders that, and we're losing it because everybody forgot the purpose of the Chesterton fence.
Moving on.
So, yeah, that's kind of the sum total of that movie where it stands. Again, the sequel will be out in January, I believe, of 26.
Yep, it's on the calendar.
So we'll have a full Damn You Hollywood for that one when it comes out, assuming nothing else comes out to challenge it, and it's January, so that's a funny joke.
I was gonna say no, it's fuck you. It's January.
Yeah.
If it was coming out in May, that's a problem.
Yeah. To kind of close, again, I really like this movie. It's sunk a little in my estimation the more I've kind of sat with it. Not bad. Like this might make my top 10. It's a little iffy, but it's there right now. Whether it stays there or not, we got 4 more months. We'll find out.
Yeah. I don't think it's gonna make my top 10, but it's definitely an honorable mention.
Minimum, this would be like if we got like 12 spots, it would easily be there, I think, for me by the time this is all said and done.
It's a top 20 movie of this year by far. But did I like it, or do I think it's better than like Companion or some of the other ones I thought were number one? Manas? No.
Yeah, again,
That's also very me.
No, that's you, and I'm not disagreeing with you necessarily. Like where it ends up on mine, I don't know.
I mean, it's no Electric Fence.
You mean the Electric State?
Yeah, whatever.
Point. Yeah. So if you haven't seen this, give it a look. It's definitely a good. If you like this franchise, it's pretty darn good. It's very Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, for better and for worse. If nothing else,
say this is better than Civil War.
Oh, easily. Well, that
we're
was
talking about Alex Garland. It's hard to compare to Warfare. Warfare, it's very much its own thing. But if we're talking about just Alex Garland stuff, this seemed less shrill than Civil War.
It helps that Garland is tempered here by Danny Boyle.
Yeah.
The two have collaborated a lot, and I think they do work well together. They kind of remove some of each other's rougher edges with the way that they collaborate. But yeah, I'd much rather watch Garland's stuff in the hands of Boyle than in his own hands, as a general rule.
Speaking of getting your hands on something, on Monday, if you enjoyed this review and you want to see Mark and Robert talk about the great cinema classics of the modern film age,
don't
watch us. Robert and I take on just a masterpiece of technology, really a crossroads of technology and human anxiety. That is War of the Worlds 2025, that went direct to Amazon Prime.
And shouldn't have even gone there.
Starring luminary actor and musician and all-around cultural icon, Ice Cube.
I wonder if most people could pick him out of a lineup these days.
I subscribe, but I can't promise anything.
You know what? Thank you for the subscribing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the subscribing. But boy, if I had a nickel for every time someone said I can't promise you anything. He says I just came to rant about 28 years.
Hey,
we appreciate that. We'll take it.
We are glad to have you. Glad to have your perspective on things, and sincerely thank you for interacting with us a little bit. Much appreciated.
If you, I have to start saying this more on TikTok, but if you, more importantly, I think than anything else, if you like what we're doing, if you like something that we said, share it with people. Just hit the repost, hit the share. It's an easy enough thing to do. It costs you nothing. That's the way this grows. Is when it starts getting into that sort of concentric loop of shared social media. So, or not, it's up to you. I don't tell people what to do. Like I say in therapy, you're an adult with agency and freedom. You do what you feel is right. But if you would like to do us a solid and a favor, please share around, repost, etc. With that said, let me back up a second. On Sunday, Jesse and I are doing a source material because I was scolded and told stop doing multiple 22 issue books. We're only doing 12 in total. We're doing the original Crow because we talked about everything else The Crow, but the actual book itself.
We've reviewed the movies. You've done a long road to ruin for all the direct-to-video ones and all their terribleness.
Yeah, so we talked about all four of the original Crow movies. We talked about the worst movie of last year, the Crow remake.
By
We
a
talked the
mile,
fucking
man. That was,
soundtrack. So we've never talked about the actual comic that inspired the franchise. So we're going to do that on Sunday. In addition to which, we're going to talk The Butcher of Paris, and then finally The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, which got a lot of press online about good non-superhero related comic books. So we'll see how that turns out. Then Monday, like I said, Damn You, Hollywood is back. Fuck You, It's August, and September are always chock full of streaming movies, and just other stuff we don't get to for the first half of the year. This is usually like our catch-up months. So a lot of triple features and Damn You, Hollywood's with streaming movies.
you're doing a triple
this is just fun.
feature. Bless you for not asking me to do this, by the way.
Oh, what, the prom, Fear Street Prom Queen, The Old Guard 2, and Fountain of Youth?
No, that's a bad one too, but Happy Gilmore 2,
Yeah, Happy Gilmore.
Heads of State.
Right.
I can't believe you're going to watch Heads of State.
It's a new John Cena again, I don't want to do what I did last year where
I know.
stuff.
Dude, it's so bad.
But I learned my lesson the first time, and not to involve you in this sort of thing, and that's what
I appreciate not being invited to that one.
Mick doesn't give a fuck, so it's
Yet.
all good. We've got some really fun triple features coming up. Okay, so just a point of fact, it was Happy Gilmore 2, Heads of State, and the Thursday Murder Club, all of which I was like, no, that Robert gets a Monday off.
I appreciate it.
But that's not coming out until September. Anyway, so this week coming up, like I said, we have those comic books. We have I'm in the wrong month now. We have War of the Worlds.
Where the aliens aren't even the biggest threat, Mark.
No, they're not. It's the data, Robert. Don't you understand? It's the data. And then Robert will be back for a good Damn You Hollywood, hosted by Alexis. They'll be talking weapons.
That's going to be the two of us and Jason Teasley. Weapons seems to be getting good reviews. A lot of people seem to be enjoying it. I haven't seen it yet, but I will before the review.
And while I'm at Toad the Red Sprocket in Virginia, Alexis and Jesse will be talking Stranger Things season 1 because everyone has to bite my rhyme, so now they're doing old TV shows. And speaking of old TV shows, we are finally fucking done with The West Wing. We'll be reviewing season 7.
It's not
Thank
good.
God.
Hey, remember when I told you season 5 was when it started to get bad, and you looked at me like I'd grown a second head because you liked season 5?
Yeah.
Who was right, Mark?
I thank you, Robert, kids. Thanks, Robert. This past Monday, speaking of which, we reviewed The Naked Gun 2025. Once again, Alexis led Robert and Jason down a gilded path. They reviewed together, and then I stole their material into the TikTok.
And you got the wrong Franco brother listed. It's
not my fault. I don't check the AI. Listen.
No, it is entirely your fault that you don't check the AI. You can't trust it.
Show you how little I cared about that movie. Speaking of which, speaking of monsters.
Oh, you would have loved it, Mark. It would have spoken to you on a deep personal level.
Now that I read that, I was like, I really should see this. I should watch this with Jonas when it comes on PVOD. Last night, myself and Alexis reviewed Monsters, which is the Monster Season 2. The first monster was Jeffrey Dahmer, which is in the archives. This one is the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, hence the plural on monster. And
yay for Javier Bardem, reminding everyone that he's a good actor.
Yeah, unlike his Little Mermaid role. So that's it. That's all.
Look, the check cashed.
That is all for me. Go ahead, Robert. Do your plugs so we can get out of here.
All right. As mentioned, next week we'll be reviewing Weapons, which is getting a lot of good buzz. I'm looking forward to that one. Last week, Mark and I reviewed Naked Gun. Then, as mentioned, Alexis, Jason, and I reviewed together. So listen to those in the archives if you're so inclined. I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. WWE SmackDown on Fridays, UFC events on Saturdays. Intermittently, I pinch hit in other locations, so you might find me over there at other times. This week, we've got the fallout from SummerSlam, the return of Brock Lesnar. I'll let you have that. And Saturday, we have UFC on ESPN 72. They're still in the warehouse. It's still not a very good night of fights, but I'll be covering it. If you want a full preview of that and a review of last week's card, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Wherever you listen to your podcasting needs, you can find me over there talking the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts and combat sports in general. I express my desire for Conor McGregor to stay far, far away from everything this time around and talk about the proposed amendments to the Muhammad Ali Act in boxing, and almost none of them are good. So tune in for that. If any of that speaks to you, go give it a listen. I appreciate the heck out of it, and mostly, we appreciate you listening to us at all. Thank you very much. Much, much appreciated. And yeah, we'll be back next week. So thank you in advance.
right.
Listening's important.
For Robert Winfrey, I have TikToks to post and record. Be well, be safe, and behave.